So now I'm really excited to also introduce our next session, which is Feminist Cooperative Tech. So in the next half an hour, I believe, 1 hour, I'm actually not quite sure. Huh? Half an hour, yeah, half an hour. We are running late anyway, so half an hour. We will be tackling questions such as what feminist tech could look like, and which legal policy frameworks would, for instance, enable feminist platforms infrastructures. Those are just a couple of questions that will be tackled in the next session. And before I pass over, I want to introduce Carla and Greta Franke, who will be facilitating the next session. So both are from the Ecological Economy Research Institute that have been part of the conveners of this conference. And Greta Franke is student assistant there. And she has been highly involved for the last years in platform co-op research. And part of her research, or focus of her research, has also been to compare framework conditions that would enable platform co-ops. I believe you have been focusing on Germany, France, and the US. And you've been also a very appreciated members of this organization group. Yes, for the last year. So big applause to Greta. And then there is also Carla Young, who has been with the EUW for, I believe, 1.5 years. You just told me in the break. And before that, you were in the US at the University of Illinois, Chicago, where you finished your PhD. And your focus of research is organization theory and economic sociology. And your field of research is to understand how people create organizations and technologies that facilitate more equitable and sustainable social economic relations. So thank you very much, and I believe you will introduce the speakers.
Please feel free to get up and stretch if you need to. It's gotten dark by now. We're in Berlin, 4:30, it's dark, so please do everything you can to stay awake. We understand. But this is a fascinating session. So we're going to take a whole different tack at this point. We're going to explore the connection between platform cooperativism and feminist perspectives on technology. Welcome from me and Greta to this session. We're going to be facilitating. We're also going to do some logistics here because we are also doing a hybrid format. So we have 2 speakers today who are going to give sort of keynote presentations. What we're going to explore in this session is how can platform cooperativism pick up the challenge of incorporating feminist notions into its further development. So we know, we've learned a lot about platform cooperativism is about bringing more equity, more democracy, more sovereignty to people and to the digital economy. That has a lot of overlap with feminist ideals. But so what can feminism still teach platform cooperativism in the conversation? We've also heard some speakers refer to structural inequalities. Not everyone can use platforms in the same way, but what's more important to us is that who gets to participate in the design of those platforms. So we're going to investigate those topics. We have 2 different perspectives with our speakers. Mayo Fuster Morell, who's going to join us online. She produced a video that we're going to see, and then she's joining us for the Q&A. And Natalia Avlona, who's here with us today, who's going to give a keynote as well. We're going to hear what it means for platforms to be gender equal and where we can intervene to get there. So I'm going to introduce Mayo first, who you're going to see later. I hope you already know who Mayo Fuster Morell is. If not, you need to catch up on her work. She's leading a research group at Dimmons Research, the Dimmons Research Group of the Open University of Catalunya. It engages, among other things, with the feminist digitalization of the social economy through the enterprise promotion program Match Impulsa Barcelona. We will learn some information about that in a second. She's also the director of the Barcelona University of Catalunya in digital economy. And she does a lot to bring actors together. So that program brings together the Open University of Catalonia, the Barcelona City Council, and the local development agency Barcelona Activa, again promoting a sharing economy that focuses on people's welfare and the right to the city. So she's very engaged and with the city of Barcelona, and she uses her expertise on digital commons also as a faculty associate at the Harvard's Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. So she's doing a lot of research, and we're going to get a glimpse of that by showing a video first.
To a feminist digital platform, and through reviewing the existing research, we have developed like a set of dimensions that should be present in order to have gender and feminist qualities in a platform. And we have also been analyzed the existing results in terms of the contrast of how they perform the capitalist model in contrast to the platform cooperatives or the commons model. Also, we have been analyzing how this sample of 27 COPs in Machimpulsa perform. So the dimensions of gender and feminist qualities of a digital platform. The first one, connected to feminist economics, is the dimension of which is the conception of the economy, which is the mission of the economy, which is the value system connected to it. Is it connected with the social provision of needs and placing life at the center? And here what we find is that the capitalist model, the hegemonic capitalist model does not put life in the center. The missions of the platforms tend not to be connected to these essential necessities, and it favors a system of value that is very centered on monetary exchange or reputational value. In contrast, platform cooperatives tend to put missions in the cooperatives that are more connected to pro-life, tend to have a value system that are more close to the use value than the exchange value, in the sense of creating resources that have been useful for covering needs, and also a more pro-social value by putting in, highlighting the importance of creating relationships and creating collaboration and community as something valuable in itself. So in this sense, the platform cooperatives would be a better model in contrast to the capitalist one in terms of the economic mission and value system. Here has been also confirmed by the analysis of the sample of 27 COPs in Machimpulsa. 81% of the COPs has in this mission is addressed to vulnerable groups and socially excluded groups, and 40% of the COPs in the Machimpulsa sample are linked to feminist networks. If we go to the second dimension of gender equality in platforms, which also came from feminist economics, is the providing of a good work-life balance. That the production and social reproduction are solved in a way that assure the care system and it's equilibrated. And here the capitalist model, again, it does not provide a good equilibrium between work and life. And it has also even promote the commodification or patriarchization of the social life. What traditionally capitalists has been doing with the woman's work at home and the domestic economy, this utilization of the invisible work and not valuated work by women in the social reproduction now is being done also with the social relationship, with our communications online and so on. So the platform cooperatives has even increased this unequal equilibrium between work and life balance in contrast to traditional capitalism. And here, platform cooperatives does not provide an alternative. It does put more in value the social dimension, but it does not provide another conciliation alternative. No, and here again, if we go to the sample of 27 cooperatives, we find out that only less than 14% of the cooperatives has actually put in place ways of flexibilization of the work beyond what is forced to be done by law. If we go to the following dimension of gender and feminist equality of a digital platform, it has to do with an equal inclusion and participation of women. Here, this is the first dimension that addresses the question of the inclusion of women in all the roles and all the spheres of the platform, no? And that there is not what the existing literature about inclusion of women in platform capitalists point that is that the platform capitalists tend to reproduce the existing traditional segregation dynamics and discrimination dynamics in the traditional economy. So the segregation by sectors, in which there are sectors like technological one that there is a lot of a majority of men, and there are sectors like care that are majority women, and also the segregation of roles inside of the platform. This is corroborated by the work of SCORE and others that I referred to in the slide. However, even if this segregation and discrimination dynamics of the platform cooperatives tend to be in line with the existing one, what we find out is that the platform cooperatives perform worse, like in terms of that include less women than the capitalist model. And here it refers to cases like very well-known cases like Wikipedia, in which even if it's a platform that can be more very accessible, only 30% of women are involved. Or if we look into the involvement of women into the alternative free and open software projects, are around 1.5% of women, while in the market private software, it's 30% of women. So here we really have a large ambit of improvement in platform cooperatives. And if we go into the data of the 27 COPs that we have been analyzed through the matching pulsar, corroborate this element. Like in the best case, there is only 30% of the cooperatives that have mechanisms for equal access to the same working position. Or only 12% of the cooperative has the data segregated by gender in order to be able to see if they are discriminating or not. Or only 9% of the cooperative have an equality access training allowing internal promotion, no? Or to assure that the internal promotion is equally no matter of gender. Or 8% has no discriminatory selection protocols, and only 5% assure that the indefinite contrasts or the more consolidated contrasts are accessible equally by women. No? The other dimensions of gender equality to have present in the platform in the digital platforms refer to the intersectional access and impact, so the importance of not only gender, but how gender connect with other access of exclusion like race or social base or origin. And here, platform cooperatives, yes, it's an alternative. In these terms, capitalist platform does not care about social base, about class, or also reproduce racist dynamic. While platform cooperatives tend to be very aware about the social dimension, and also because in its model assure the access to the means of production because it's a more democratic modality, also a less alienation of the work, and a more fair distribution of the value generated. Or in some cases, the access to the generated resource as a public good. No? So in these terms, as a model in its principles, it performed better, at least in the dimension of social. Another quality, it has to do with assuring in the platform a good treatment and non-gender violence, so to be a free violence zone. And here, there is not literature, there is not studies about this. There is not studies about how neither the platform capitalism or the cooperative model impact on gender-based violence, even if we are seeing with the COVID, we are seeing the increase of gender-based violence, but we don't know what is the impact of this transition to digital platforms in terms of gender-based violence. What we find out is that in the Machimpulsa sample of 27 COPs, only 8% of them has explicit protocols against sexual harassment or sex-based harassment. It's very low. Another dimension of gender equality has to do with performativity, referring to the symbolics. And here we have 30% of the cooperatives participating in Machimpulsa has a mechanism for guaranteeing gender-neutral or non-sexist communication. Another two dimensions that are important to consider, but there are no data neither in literature, neither in the analysis of the COPs that we have been doing, has to do with assuring a non-discriminatory technology, that technology does not, is programmed, for example, in the algorithms, or there is a gender perspective into the data, and also the element of empowerment, how far the platform takes responsibility of empowering those with an equal situation and disempower and take privileges of those who has these privileges. As I say, Machimpulsa is trying to it's a study about the gender dynamics in the cooperatives, but it's also a training program in order to promote feminist digitalization. So this is the type of training that we are giving to the cooperatives that are participating, like how to design a gender equality plan, how to promote a gender perspective into a project, how to identify and combat gender-based violence, how to have a gender perspective into data, how to incorporate care ethics into the program, how to incorporate non-sexist communication, or we have also been training the cooperatives participating into the history of the digital feminism. Another part of the program of Machimpulsa is called Machigualtat, that is a program of providing funding, 1,100 euros, to 9 cooperatives in order to support the feministization, in the sense of support a project for assuring equality into the digital platforms, and also putting resources for creating matches between the cooperatives and the organizations that are experts in providing gender equality training services. A second part of the program is making this match between cooperatives and technological companies like or cooperatives, because many times cooperatives doesn't know how to relate to the digital competencies, or they don't know how to develop the digitalization plan, no, or how to run their platform. So this element of making a match between cooperatives with technological companies, and not only making a match, actually providing funding for them for making the technological briefing and prototyping the development is part of the program. Just want to end up with a lot of hope, because actually, yes, we realize there is a problematic into a lot of space of improvement into the platform cooperative is to be an alternative not only to capitalism but also to patriarchy. But this is happening in a context of the fourth wave of feminists. It's also been present in the internet, and a big wave for a feminist internet in the context of platform cooperativism, in which can bring a lot of energy. And I think the merging of platform cooperativism movement with the feminist internet movement, it would be extremely beneficial. And And just again, I wish I could be with you in Berlin, but I am online and very happy to answer your questions and engage with the debate. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Mayo. I think she's already listening in the live stream. Thanks for your presentation. I'm really sure there's a lot that you want to discuss with her, but first we want to hear a presentation from our second guest, Natalia Avlona, who is already here. And Natalia is a lawyer, researcher, and Marie Curie PhD fellow in the computer science department at the University of Copenhagen, and there she's working on how value is inscribed into data-driven design. She's exploring alternative data value frameworks through a care and commons ethic lens, and Natalia is also a research co-lead for DISCO organization, which we have heard about from Stako already this morning, and she is the co-founder of the techno-feminist hacking network, Restorative Infrastructures. Natalia, you have the stage.
Hello, can you hear me? I have some slides, actually. I don't really know if they're...
The green? Yes.
Oh, great. So yeah, apologies for this hybrid event. It's just we were in a very messy discussion of how we will do it because some of us were not able to be here, some of us were managed to be here. And I know you're all very tired from long conversation and long day, so please bear with me, standing, like do some stretching, whatever you feel like, I wouldn't mind. So I am really impressed by the fascinating work of Mayo, and I don't know if she can hear me now. She's live streamed. So it's a very bottom-up way of doing and organizing like feminist toolkits for cooperatives in Barcelona. And it's a very inspirational project because in Greece 2 years ago, we tried to do some participatory design workshops on gender issues in social and solidarity economy. And it was obvious that all the concerns were there, but it was very, very difficult to systematize these concerns and to tackle them. And at some point in my life, I was working with more mainstream institutions and organizations, and paradoxically, it was much easier to apply gender equality plans there. So I think it's crucial to find a way to subvert gender equality plans and these tools for women's cooperatives and platform cooperatives in a ways that is not just identity politics and just diversity talk of add more women in the pot and stir, but to be able to restore the infrastructures and these initiatives in a feminist way. So today and yesterday we were talking a lot about we, and I was thinking who we represent and what is this we, and us as a communities, as citizens, as scholars, individual researchers, activists. So we do not come from the same place. We do not come from the same colonial histories. We do not definitely come from the same class origins, race origins. So I'm here today to speak as a researcher, white woman, who has been inhabiting southern precarious conditions for quite a few years. And now I'm in a more privileged standpoint from another institution, working the same issues from a different positionality. So I really have to mention this. And I think that I will try to respond to what Mayo presented, in a much more theoretical and conceptual lens. So if I see you yawning or dying from boredom, I will not take it personally, I can assure you. And I think I hope we have some time for Q&A. I really think that it's very important to contextualize our discussion and our strategies when we have a look in the past. And I tried very, very, very schematically to draw some stuff here, as you can see. So we need to trace the histories and the struggles of also bordering movements to the movement of the cooperative and practices as at commons, digital commons, social and solidarity economy initiatives. So for example, Trebor yesterday mentioned the long history tradition of the cooperative. So there is a long history tradition in women cooperatives. And actually in UK in 1883, Mary Lawson, who was a teacher, recognized the need to organize a separate women organization within the UK cooperative movement, and they organized the Women's League for Spread of Cooperation, and within 1 year, they managed to develop 6 different brands within 195 members. We start from there. So 2 centuries tradition. And then we have all these discussions with Marxist feminists, and I suppose most of you know Marxist feminism Federici, and most of you love her. And long ago, in 70s, she was trying to recenter the discussion of the commons on the sphere of the reproduction. And the sphere of the reproduction includes all the domestic work, all the child rearing, the caring for the elderly, of the sick, also all this work we do in the neighborhood and the community. And it's very, 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 very invisible and undervalued. And yes, it is very, very essential for our material and social reproduction. So most of you know that her argument for many decades now, that the commons are a structural alternative to capitalism, is combined with a notion of actually restructuring and revising our social relations. So restructuring the way we divide the work and the care work and this boundary, restructuring the way that the productive and the reproductive sphere are articulated out there. So in this tradition, the digital commons discussion emerged and the new commons discussion emerged. And a lot of us people here, we have been part of this tradition the last 10 years at least, but this is transition of 40 years almost. And I will say something which is not really nice, but I have to say it. So in the trajectory of the FOSS communities and the hacker spaces and the hacker ethos, there was a lot of preaching about the values of horizontality, decentralization, sharing, and learning by doing. But the truth is that these communities have been dominated by Eurocentric, white, tech-savvy, masculine paradigm. So women, non-binary people of color, technologically illiterate people have been underrepresented in these communities. And that was the point that more intersectional feminist practices came out there with feminist hackerspaces or biohacking labs in Spain, in Vienna, and they managed to respond to this exclusionary culture, and they tried to repurpose the hacking by hacking. So it was what we say, hacking the hacking in a feminist way. And this is a tradition that really worked in terms of inclusion and on the symbolic level of performativity. So then we have to acknowledge that in social and solidarity economy and the RIPES organization that has been around Europe many years now, they have been struggling to bring in the forefront the issues of invisibility of women in social and solidarity economy and their care work. And in 2013 in Manila, it was signed declaration that promised to bring more women's inclusion and more women leadership into social and solidarity economy. It's been 8 years by then. So yeah, just saying. And then we have all this tradition of feminist economics, Gibson, Graham, these people, these women that they struggle to talk about the way we count things and the way we count the invisible labor. So that's a very grounded and interesting approach. And they managed, in the 80s, actually to show that the economic theories, the mainstream economic theories, failed to take into consideration all the unpaid domestic work in official aggregates such as the gross domestic product. So they played with numbers and they won. And very recently, we have movements of feminism in the Growth Alliance, and a very, very interesting movement that really was energized during the COVID period and the care crisis. So actually, I have a question here, which is, was this a COVID-19 crisis or a care economic crisis? I think all of us, because we're here, we agree that this was a care economic crisis. So this crisis actually became a magnifying lens to the pre-existing discriminations across race, gender, and class. And it also increased like all these inequalities. So on the one hand, like all the vulnerable population, women, migrant, refugees, homeless people from the LGBTQI community, people with disabilities and caregivers, they found themselves in more vulnerable position. And on the other hand, it became more clear than ever that the formal economy, families, communities, and our very survival is based on the chronic, invisible, and unpaid work of women. Our survival was also based on the unpaid work of doctors, nurses, caregivers, cleaners, platform workers, and supermarket employers. However, like this crisis didn't happen like, out of the blue. It happened within a decade that it became very clear that our economy is fueled by data, and this data imperative dogma is dominating more and more aspects of our lives. So Neelie Kroes in the World Economic Forum in 2011 very notoriously said, like, data is the new oil. And this has become like one of the most dominant metaphors on the value that is attributed to data nowadays by the big tech and the government. And all of them, like big tech, state, they all seem to require our data in order to be able to perform, to maximize the profit, and also to provide some services. So during the COVID period, however, two things happened. In some countries that they were not already very, very advanced in digitization, so for example, southern countries like Greece, a lot of the public services, they were digitized and became data-driven in a very abrupt way. And these services, they were related to the care provision, to healthcare, and to education. Secondly, as Francesca mentioned yesterday, the revenues and the Western technology titans like GAFAM, they managed to grow 40% on the average compared with the same period. What is presented, like I tried to do like a really bad sketch right here, is like what is presented like in the mainstream EU and media discussions as the tension and the struggle between like the free data flow and economic growth, and on the other hand, like the data protection, is based on fundamentally wrong assumptions and obviously huge asymmetries on the way value is distributed. So from the one hand, like there is like this free data flow imperative and economic growth, but what is economic growth? Anyways, big discussion. And from the other hand, we have like the individual whose data should be protected. And on this perceived balance, individuals are supposed to be protected by the current legislation of GDPR and some kind of ethical design. Oh, well. So here is like another bad sketch that I try to somehow contextualize what, from different standpoints, a lot of us are trying to articulate through practices from activism and through some speculative design of the future. So legal debates about like better protection of the data subject, better protection of our autonomy and control are in a wrong direction. So if we want as people to have a say in the social processes, so in order to shift towards a more emancipatory data governance model, I don't really refer to democratic governance model, because what does democracy mean nowadays? Where the distribution of value is negotiated from different standpoints, this means that we need to shift our attention from the individual protection of data to more collective representations of people interests. Hence, this could give us better institutional negotiations. So in order to do this, we need to acknowledge one of the basic feminist imperatives, because I'm really sure you have been wondering where feminism is in the last 10 minutes of my talk. So the interesting thing is that feminist legal scholars have been talking about like the interdependency of us as selves, as human beings, to other human beings and the nature. Feminist degrowthers are doing this. And yet, this is something that has been never really manifested into the laws that we are making out there. And it's something that it's really, really essential to bring into the discussion of the way that data is protected. And this is important because I think that like alternative governance models, like data cooperatives and data trust, are essential, but they need to go hand in hand with a reworking of what is data. So legal theories, feminist legal theories, have argued that we need to unpack the construction of what is a legal right. And this means to unpack the idea of property. And this means to unpack the idea of the self as a boundary object, like the self against the state and the market. And what they say is that we need to acknowledge that we are part of an ecosystem, we are part of like the relationships we make, and we need to acknowledge that we need to rework towards like more collective rights constitution, which may sound utopic, but I think with the whole idea of data as common strand of thought, this is something that we may achieve in the near future. So in this way, collective value negotiation would be bargained better, because right now what has been done is that like data analytics are classified as in groups of interest. And these groups of interest like reflects their neoliberal economic values in order to maximize profit. So we are already kind of, for them, we are not individuals. We are like just a group of interest to maximize profit. So this is done in their own terms, in their own way. And what we're saying is that what we suggest is like, let's try to define the way that we group our own interests. So I want to conclude now with a bit of speculation of 3 points that I think that would be interesting food for talk, study, research in order to reclaim the future of data-driven economy with the feminist platform cooperatives. So the first point is that at the same time, workers, researchers, activists, people from cooperatives, I don't say we, are organizing efforts around data trust and data cooperatives. We need to rework the legal foundation of personal data from a relational approach and establish data commons as collective legal rights. Secondly, we need to rethink and restructure the care work within a platform cooperative on the rotational axis of livelihood work, care work, and community work, lab work. DISCO model is exactly this. I will let Stako and Irene explain it afterwards, but this is like redistributing like the boundaries from within. So if we want to go beyond the diversity talks of big tech and care ethics that are not applied and they remain in will intentions, we have to rethink care work from within. And lastly, we need to rethink the design of the platform, of the platform cooperatives on principles that they are brought to us by work of data feminism, and this means like participatory design with most marginalized people, or making even the labor visible in the way that data are visualized. So these things they may seem simple and symbolic, but they are very performative, and sometimes like the way we talk, the way we behave, like all the metaphors we are producing like reality. So we need to tackle this. So whatever is your question, the answer is in your communities. And I think, I don't know how much time we have, so 5 minutes. Q&A? Yeah. Good. You're done? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't have a thank you slide.
Excellent. No one's yawning and only one person sleeping, so I think that's a great success. And I'm definitely wide awake. I'm really pleased that I think your talks actually were really connected in the way that we had empirical insights on really existing organizations and how they're doing with in terms of gender equality, and the conceptual propositions from Natalia. And we'd like to use our last 5 minutes. That's sort of the message I got for Q&A. I'm sure there's questions and comments that have emerged in the audience. Please raise your hands now, and we'll collect maybe 2. Right, while people are still being shy, we could ask Mayo, since she's now live with us. Thank you for joining us at this point. Would you like to tell us how you worked out the dimensions? Because we had to start the presentation at the point when you started talking about the dimensions. So You discussed 6 dimensions of gender equality, and what's the overall picture? Please, can you summarize your findings for us? Oh, no, you're still on mute, Mayo. Oh, it's on our end. Liegt es bei uns? I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay, first, I'm sorry I cannot be in Berlin. And then I am sorry for the public because my presentation was cut. So it was projected just losing a part. So it might has been difficult to follow. Basically, the dimensions of gender and feminist qualities came up from a systematic literature review that I performed over the last 25 years studies on gender approaches to the digital economy. This resulted into an article that has been published in Nature, and it resulted that there has been very few studies on approaches of from a gender perspective into the digital economy, and particularly platform economy and platform cooperativism. But it points to certain dimensions that are relevant when adopting a feminist theory perspective, no? And this is where it came from. Then I apply these dimensions into the analysis of a sample of 27 cooperatives that are the cooperatives that are participating in the acceleration program of Matching Pulsa. And the statistical data that was presented around this element that only the mission part perform well, but the rest of the dimensions of gender equality in platform cooperatives tend to perform quite poorly. Like only 10% of the cases that we have been analyzing has protocols against sexual harassment or has protocols to assure not discrimination to access long-term contracts, no? And I think if we analyze the program of the new sense, the new common sense, we might end up in the same conclusion. In the sense of a 6-day program, we only have a half an hour dedication to the feminism. And I think really, we have to question ourselves what needs to happen in order to, after the 4th wave of feminism, after there's so much evidence about the gender discriminatory dynamics in platform cooperativism, what has to happen in order for a conference like this one dedicate a bit more time to try to connect with the digital feminist movement that this now is booming and it's growing a lot and it's providing a lot of creativity online. And in order to also inject more with the feminist theory, no?
Thank you, Mayo. I think that's the question we're interested in too. What needs to happen is what are next steps? I don't know if you, Natalia, want to respond quickly to sort of what would be the obvious next steps to get to the propositions that you've opened. We also have a question in the audience. Let's take the question first. And then
Hi, Christina Kolkloff from the Why Not Lab. Mayo, that was just brilliant. Yes, why only half hour out of a 6-day conference, and why so late in the day today? I agree with you. But my question is, women have for many, many years conducted unpaid labor through their care work, and I love that you position this as a crisis of the care economy. How can we politicize, if we look at data cooperatives, if we look at workers in the gig economy, how can we again politicize the unpaid labor and really combine the lessons from the female activism around the decades and decades of unpaid labor they've put into the economy with the current very exploitative models that are out, but also the good examples we've heard today from the cooperative movement of sharing the downtime, sharing the risk and the costs and so on. So my question is, how can we politicize that to boost the feminist agenda of stopping really all of this unpaid labour that women have conducted for years, and still, when they are in paid labour, paid consistently less than men. So but also thank you to the panel. This has been excellent.
So I think the question is directed at either of you. Mayo, would you like to respond first?
Unpaid work strike or something like this. I would say like to retake the strikes of care work that we were celebrating before the COVID. I think it would be my first reaction. Here, I would say that there is a urgent necessity that in the platform cooperative debate, we not only talk about production like the previous session that was developed by half an hour and men talking without any moment referring to social reproduction. We need to really introduce the element of the social reproduction into the analysis and the framework of platform cooperatives. Because if we provide platform cooperatives only as a production alternative, a model, and we forgot if it's going to bring another, a more equal distribution of care and reproduction work and another conciliation equilibrium, if it's not going to bring an alternative in those terms, then it's a fake. And then I want to inject also with the other presenter that I really enjoyed your presentation, is that perhaps data can be an alliance in the sense of, because there is unpaid work that is being developed in the social reproduction at home and in the domestic economy. But there is also unpaid work done at the platform cooperative as part of our production work. So if we look about who take care of the emotional dimensions, who take care of care, who take care about many elements about the sustainability of the work that we develop together in cooperatives, it emerges that many times this is also unequally distributed and needs to be also solved, no? And perhaps data, because all of our interactions in the digital platforms remain in the data, perhaps data and putting data to work in order to illuminate this. And for example, this has been already in the analysis of Wikipedia. There has been an analysis of Wikipedia on the basis of the data existing about what the Wikipedians do in the platform, and it emerged this element that mostly the women are doing editions that have to do with community care, and in contrast to more visible editions around the articles, no? So I would put data to work in order to visualize this problematic in our platform cooperatives that we share, and also to see how to solve it.
Natalia, would you like to add something to this?
Thank you, Mayo. Can you hear me? I don't know if it, okay, great. Yeah, I think I'm thinking two things right now. The first one is a more kind of radical care manifesto, which will go beyond platform cooperativism and will say that, you know, work-life balance is a bit of bullshit. And actually, everyone has to do some care work for the community, and we should just try to push some policy agendas about this, because people who have never done care work, like, I mean, how can we trust them? And this is like the big picture about policy and like feminist agendas of what we would like to see in the future. But like right here, right now, because like there is a lot of right here and right now, and we think like the cooperatives and platform cooperatives, what like Mayo said is like, I think very, very important to rework these gender equality plans and reclaim them from their liberal tradition of quota and try to rework them in more radical ways. And if we try to rework the way that like the care labor within like the platform cooperativism is distributed and acknowledged and is visible and discussed at the assemblies, then we may be able to challenge like this division of the production and reproduction within like the cooperative. So these 2 points for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We ran out of time, but we have one more question that.
Thank you, thank you. I have a couple of questions actually, but I'm not going to. I think to point to Natalia's point, I think that is a choice of the cooperatives, right? So to put care into the agenda of the workplace and on the actual kind of like work that is developed and done by the cooperative, it is a choice. It's either to look at what are the care practices of that particular organization and make them visible and count them, register them somehow. Yeah, so that's one comment. And then to Mayo, a great presentation, although we missed the first, kind of like the background, but going visual on your the diagrams, what are the demographics of the co-ops that you studied that hit green? Does that make sense? So who are the people, what type of people are behind those green squares in your presentation? Thank you.
Mayo, you can give a really short answer because we're then about to close the session.
Okay, thank you for the question. By the way, my presentation is completed. It's full on Twitter. I shared it on Twitter, so if you want to see the first part, you can see it there. So the cooperatives in the sample of 27 that are performing at least some of the dimensions, are those who actually are defined as feminist. Because in the 27 sample, there are cooperatives from the food sharing food movement, or Airbnb, or Mensaca, like alternative for riders. There were different kinds, but some of them came with a explicit feminist framework, and those are the ones who perform better. So if a cooperative doesn't work explicitly in a feminist frame, most possibly they will not have gender equality practices.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayo, and everyone here, and Natalia, of course. I think we are over time, so we have to finish this session, but I really hope that we can continue the discussions on this really important topics. And if you want to see Mayo's complete talk, you can go on Twitter, as she just mentioned. Do you want to add something, Carla?
No, thank you so much for giving us the overtime. Basically, the time was taken by us. And thank you, Natalia. Last words.
30 minutes of a session is just the beginning. That's